Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. So today I have got Gary Kinzett and he is the Business Development Manager for Gul-e. Thank you, Gary, for joining me. We've been chatting for a bit before we started recording, haven't we? So we've got to know each other. It's always good to get to know who I'm talking to if I've not met you before. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for the invite, Liz. Thank you.
So your business, the business that you're working with is Gul-e. They are a cross-pavement solutions organisation, aren't they? Yeah. Which is a real big topic at the moment, and it's really, really important. Let's just and you talked to me a little bit about this before we started recording. Let's just have a little bit of your background and what was it that brought you to this stage of working for an organisation like Gul-e?
Yeah, so it's a lot of people talk about their journey, but it's something that I'm particularly proud about because it's a conscious decision that I made, and I think I'm probably not alone. In fact, I know I'm not alone because on LinkedIn you read about all sorts of people, finishing careers and stopping doing stuff, and I was one of those. Been in IT, worked for IBM for 25 years as a corporate salesman. Delivering shareholder value from memory, and was sat in my office working on the single account I had, looking out the window, thinking, this is COVID, I've not seen anyone for days apart from my family, and there's got to be more to working life than this. I'm not getting the same buzz, and looking out at the time there were no planes in the sky. Everything seemed, the weather was fantastic. We were going out for walks as a family, and it was a very calm existence at that time. And I made my mind up then that I was going to not work in IT anymore, and I was going to do good. I didn't know what good looked like, but I just wanted to do good stuff for the planet, for my kids, for my neighbours. Reducing carbon emissions, helping climate change wherever I could, and try and make a positive impact on whatever it was I was doing. So I ended up selling solar panels. I left IBM, and they were fantastic. I had six months notice to make sure everything was, because I wasn't leaving I wasn't going to a competition or anything. It was I think it was Coldplay said, a conscious uncoupling. So I did that, and I sold solar panels commercially, residentially, and residents particularly able to pay and not able to pay. We talked about those. We'll come back to them, I'm sure. And I've been involved in probably broad umbrella as decarbonisation, and this role with Oxford Direct Services, who own Gul-e, who sell Gul-e. They when I went for the interview. And I was asked because of my background whether I would go for interview, so I went to Oxford. And as I walked in through the gates, the council vans all had "doing good" plastered down the side of their vans. So it was kind of like they'd already known I was coming, so they painted the vans particularly. So that's my background, and that's why I'm choosing to do this. So this isn't really work. This is just what I happen to do during the day.
Fantastic, and actually. You're so right. I think probably a lot of people who I know in kind of through the podcast actually over the last couple of years, and kind of just generally are starting to sort of wake up to that. What can I do to make a difference? Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I set the podcast up. And partly because I've been living with a climate change professor for over 20 years now. So, it's kind of that. It was about time, really, and you get to an age. I always talk about my age, but you kind of get to an age, don't you, that you kind of just think, do you know what, I need, let's just cut the
Yeah.
crap and get on with this now. We need to make a difference.
Exactly. My kids have gone to university now. There's just me and my wife in the house. You've got a lot more focus on, the world around you. You're looking at the floods. If there was somehow we could coordinate the forest fires and the floods to come at one after the other, one could put the other one out, and then it wouldn't be so bad, would it? So you look around the world and you think if every individual was able to make a change together, every mickle makes a muckle. You can just have a group mentality, and then become a community, then a region, then a country. And I think unless we all get coordinated, I think I used the analogy over the weekend of it's like going on a skiing slope, and then we're at the point now where as a species, we're going to lean back on our skis and take off out of control if we're not careful. And it feels very much like that, without being overly dramatic. But luckily,
no, I get you.
We've got solutions out there to help minimise all of these things.
Yeah, and I'm still thinking of the mickle and a muckle. I like that one. I've not heard of every mickle makes a muckle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very good saying. So I do like that. Let's talk. Pardon?
Small steps.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're journey, don't they?
Yeah, it's just very much what I stand for, incremental changes. So yeah, and just before I ask you some more questions, I was going to say that actually there are lots of people out there who don't feel that they've got the ability to make a change.
Yeah.
But everybody has. You just have to make that conscious decision, don't you?
And stick at it as well.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
Just 1 hour, one day. It has to be repeatable and embedded. You have to make a lifestyle. So we didn't buy coal. We shut our front fireplace. We had an open fire there, and I've been burning coal and logs and stuff, and had a diesel car. And again, I had a bit of an argument with my wife saying, well, we're not going to be toasty warm and put the marshmallows on anymore because we're blocking that up. And apart from the money, again, it's not burning fossil fuels. So little things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about what cross-pavement solutions are, because there might be people who don't know what they are. There are probably going to be quite a few people who do. But let's just explain for those people who are unfamiliar with what a cross-pavement solution is. And actually, I'll let you talk about it, but they've been around for a while, haven't they?
They have. On the face of it, they are fairly uninteresting piece of technology. So cross-pavement solutions are, as the name suggests, if you have an EV charger, if you have a driveway, you can have an EV charger as permitted development, no charge, just wave through, pay your electrician to install it, buy your EV car, reverse onto your drive, and away you go. You're getting advantage. If you live in a terraced house or a house without a driveway or a flat, again, there's some specifics around length of cables, length of EV cables. So if you're on the third floor of a flat, you're not going to drape a cable outside because it's illegal, and two, you'll run into problems where the charge won't carry through the 7 meters or 8 meters of technical limit of that. So for terraced houses, streets without any driveways, you have your EV charger on, and particularly in Oxford where Gul-e started, there were cables being draped across the pavement, some right across the pavement, like 2 foot off the ground, because
oh my god,
you'd have to go under it, and there are other pictures of frameworks that have been built out of wood that go up and over and then come down the other side. It's just all of it completely unsafe and unsatisfactory. And what the cross-pavement market is that it's underground conduit, it's channels, it's an EV channel that you thread a cable into, you push a cable into. So there are 4 or 5 suppliers in the market today. We're one of them. We were the first ones, and ours were based on the drainage channels that you'll see around major cities. So downpipe from the house through the drainage channel, and then the water would go into the curb and away. And we took that in Oxford when the fleet for Oxford Direct Services moved from diesel to electric. There weren't enough chargers in the compound for all the vehicles to be charged overnight. So some of the operatives were taking them home and installing EV charging at home, but they had no way of getting across the pavement. And it was then that the highways team looked at what was in the pavement right next door and could see the drainage channels. So they took that concept and they updated it. It's an industrial design anyway, because they've been in the ground for 10, 20, 30 years, and in cast iron format longer than that. So we knew that they were resilient, and we just upgraded them to be a modern design with some checker plates to, for anti-slip. They were all tested for weight, because you get lorries and cars and vans and all sorts of things over a 10 or 20 year period going up onto the pavement. So they needed to be really resilient. You fit them once and forget them. But essentially that's the concept, is that they go under the pavement. They allow cables to go under the pavement or through the pavement to the other side. And then when you plug it into your car, which is outside your house, and when you're finished, you just remove them and then you coil it up again. And that's at a high level, that's what we all do as cross-pavement solution providers.
And that makes sense. I mean, I was I can't remember where we went somewhere last year, and I remember seeing the channels, kind of like you say, the aluminium channels cut through the pavement that had been there for water, for kind of taking water off the pavement for a long time. I remembered from many years ago that they were there, so it makes sense. But how have the local authorities, because you originally did this in Oxford, haven't you? You've kind of used Oxford as your trial. How have the trials?
Oxford were involved in all of the design and all of the compliance questions around highways regulation. They were at the table with us, making sure that the product was compliant from all angles, not just a fabrication point of view, but also from a highways and liability point of view. So little things like our slot is 18 millimeters wide, which is the same width as the drainage channel, because it's compliant. So we stick to what is compliant. So they were at the table.
So if we're talking about the fact that a specific local authority was involved in the kind of the putting this together and making sure that it's safe and secure, etc., that there's no slippage, etc. Nobody can trip, nobody can slip on it. What has been the kind of the feedback? Because I've seen this, but I want you to talk about this from other local authorities, because you've had trials across different local authorities, haven't you?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, from South Wales. Oxford, we've been in the ground since 21, so we're coming up 3.5 years now, late 21. So they've been our longest under trial, and we've got a couple of London boroughs, Bromley, Richmond are coming through, Stoke are coming through, Suffolk, and again, these are not just gullies. The councils are typically looking at, some of them are just Gul-e because they're just happy with it and it works, so we're going to use it. And others are looking at the range, and will probably offer the range to the residents who can choose what style or what design they want to go for. So each of us as a product have our own different use cases, that where we have a sweet spot in design, where you say, well, I just want something that's really industrial, something that's really robust, and it's going to last 20 years. I don't want any other bells and whistles that may or may not come with the other products. So the local authorities, they are all different. They all have different background issues on funding, on staffing, on how much they want to charge, if they want to charge. The government has helped with the Levi funding for funding, providing funding at a level to run pilots, to run cross-pavement pilots. So that's been a big enabler for them, because otherwise you're looking at the cost of an EV charger, the cost of install, the cost of cross-pavement, cost of install, all the permits, all the permissions, and you come to a figure, and sometimes that figure is not accessible to the residents who live in those houses. So it was a passion of mine when I was sat in my garden room looking out at the clear blue skies of the able to pay market, who wouldn't blink an eye at a couple of thousand, and the not able to pay market, where that's a significant investment that may well be a barrier to entry for them. So I mean, I summarised it because obviously I knew I was coming on today with you, Liz. So I put together a little catchy something for my own benefit, so I could remember my thought processes about 4 Ps. The planning, lots of different local authorities have a different view. There are some local authorities that can't do it as permitted development, and I agree with that. I think that having an electrical device on a house needs to be recorded somewhere. So I'm an advocate of having some sort of application. So there's a Northern Council is running what's called I have to read it because I can never get it right, it's Latin, de minimis. And that's a very cut down, it's like planning light. It's cut down, it's repeatable because it's just an EV charger or another one, tick box, tick box, tick box. Low cost, but it records the make, the model, the picture, and it gets an electrical certificate. So we start off with a robust audit process. Then you go to the pavement, so the second P. Most councils require what's known as an S50 to open the highway. So if you wanted to drop a curb, you would have to apply for an S50. In the same way, we're cutting the pavement to make a trench to embed the gully solution in it, and then we're cementing it in, and then we're dressing it and making it all good. So any pavements are cut to size so it looks neat and tidy, because it's got not to be a trip hazard from being unfinished at the wrong level, but also it needs to be done to a high standard so that people take a bit of pride in it. And if they take pride in it, they will sweep it out and keep it clean as part of their subscription. Pricing, we've got to look at the cost of some local authorities don't charge for permits, some do. Some don't charge for S50s, some do. So there's no uniformity to say, well, here's just a single price, let's call it a cross-pavement permit, and this is £50 for admin, and we'll spread it over a year or something like that. And that leads me on to payments. When you, like I said before, the cost of these things, yes, it's important, but the benefits far outweigh the cost. We should be enabling as many people as possible. And if we can, and we're working on that, and we're not alone. I don't want this to necessarily be just about Gul-e. It's just that I can only talk about Gul-e because that's how I spend my days, is promoting Gul-e and working with installers and working with residents to coordinate these things. So, I'm aware that I've got a couple of residents who don't have that money available, and they're asking for ways that we can spread the payments. And we're working with an EV charging partner, EVEC, to work out some terms where we can build it all together and build it over a year. And again, we work with all the councils because some of them want to make it a revenue stream for them, and they want to own it. So Oxford own the Gul-e, we sell to them, we sell the install, and they own it, and then they offer it back to the resident on a subscription basis, whereas other councils don't. They don't want to know anything. And again, I was at 2 calls on Friday. Both of them wanted a managed service where they had he said, we haven't got enough people to do what we do now. All of a sudden, you're going to say 6.6 million houses don't have a driveway. How many of those 100,000 are in our borough? And we haven't got the people to do it. We will need a managed service. Now that's where we can come in, because we're used to dealing with civil installs from Oxford, and we're working with partners on a nationwide basis. So that's the next level, is to have a range of financial models that local authorities can say, well, we'll have Model A because that fits us, or we'll have Model C, please. And then it's an engagement model that's flexible and has got the resident at the end. The outcome is to enable them to charge at 7 pence a kilowatt. We talked earlier.
Yeah.
Difference between 7 pence and 70 pence on the motorway, or at the Asda fast charge hub, or the Shell or BP. It's a game changer for the wrong reasons. If you have an EV car that it's £3.50, I use the analogy of 50 kilowatts at home is £3.50. 50 kilowatts at 70 pence is £35. If you're doing a lot of miles, then it mounts up and stops becoming financially as attractive as it could be. And again, going back to the people who are the not able to pay, they are typically the people where that difference between £35 and £3.50 will be way more important than the able to pay, who that's just a round of drinks at the pub. For these people, it's a proper, that £35 or £30 savings they could use elsewhere, and it would make such a difference.
I think that's really, really important, actually thinking about those residents anyway, isn't it? Because we were talking about this before we started recording. How can you can't, it just seems really unfair to kind of penalise people who, just because they haven't got a drive. I like your word enabling, because I feel that that's a really, really positive, proactive, phrase, because there are people out there who probably want to do this. They've maybe managed to change to an EV, or they want to change to an EV, but they live on a street where there's no, where it's all terraced housing or whatever, and actually they can't afford to charge a public charger that's 79p per kilowatt hour or 89p per kilowatt hour, depending on where it is. And that just seems really unfair. So actually having the ability to not just allow them to have a channel cut in the pavement for them to use their EV that they want, but actually to be able to use that cheap overnight tariff. Why shouldn't we be able to do this?
I totally agree.
I was going to say, what is there? So you kind of said that that some councils charge and some councils don't charge. So there's no kind of standardisation for the councils then.
No, because they, again, I think they know their demographic better than I do, for instance. I don't want to be too sort of general, but London and the home counties, where a terraced house could be £1 million.
I know.
It could also, you could also have it at £100,000. Those are the different ends of the market, and I think because there is no centralised approval for the products. I mean, my product is a 2 metre metal. It's 3mm galvanised steel, and has no moving parts. It's got this little dust preventer, like a draft excluder that's on its side that you feed the cable through. That is it. Like I say, it's not intellectually stimulating, but what it does is enables the route from the EV charger to the car, and that gap is a significant gap to the haves and the have-nots.
Yes.
And benefit, in terms of real money. I was going to say in the tank, but it's not in the tank, it's in the battery. But it's that purpose is, if you didn't have this, and you can't, I've got local authorities who just say, no, we're not doing it, and that's it. And it's frustrating, because with ICE cars being withdrawn for sale as new, 2030, 2035, net zero, 6.6 million, it is only going to go one way, and we are 5 years away from that, and 10 years away from from net zero. You have to do things now. We have to start building now. If you want to do a trial and a user evaluation, these things take 6 months, 8 months. You've got vetting procedures to do and all those sorts of things. That before you know it, we're in 26, then it's 4 years, and then 3 years, and we're going to be caught. We're going to be caught again a little bit behind the curve on so many things. So what would be handy would be some centralised, and we're working on a solution to that, having a cross-pavement permit that satisfies, that's all 4 of the documents pushed together, take out all the duplication. Yeah, how many times do you want to put the address down? We don't. We do it once. And then compress, but it's because there's silos of engagement, you have to repeat the process 3 or 4. You only need one part of that process to say, no, well, we don't, we were talking earlier about a particular London borough. We don't believe we've got room in the pavement because we're a central London borough and we've got utilities, telecoms and other services that are buried in the pavement, and there's too much risk. So going in and cutting it and then burying these things. There's too many things nearby. There's too many. You could list a whole raft of reasons. Now I need to look at it in greater detail. And I think if there was central government, some sort of approval process, streamlining of the documentation, so instead of it being end-to-end 50 pages, you make it maybe 10 pages, make it 5. So long as everyone has an audit process with photographic evidence of correct installation, a point in time where you say, here's my baseline, it's good. It's an enhancement. It's a bit of street furniture that enhances the lives of the residents. And I think a lot of local authorities, there's a disconnect between the residents and the money they pay, the taxpayers, and the type of services that are traditionally offered, bins, parks, streets, cleaning and things like that. This is another opportunity to really deliver significant resident satisfaction. How nice would it be? I mean, where I live, they don't have the resources to do this, and I'm engaging directly with them, and I live in the authority, and it's my money that's going into the pot for them. They know they're going to have to do this. And they're talking to me, and I've got a vested interest. I mean, I've got to drive, but I also live very, very close to places that have virtually no drives. It's a market town that's got lots of very narrow streets, cobbled streets, and that's where our solutions are going to make a difference. And everyone will be driving EV cars or paying £12 a gallon. You choose. That's
there's that as well. So okay, so you've actually brought me to another question then. What is the feedback from the residents then? The ones that you've actually kind of run this, you're kind of installing the channels. What has been the feedback so far?
So we get two types of feedback. No feedback, because it's such an insignificant and integrated part of there's not a lot to go wrong. Yeah, it's an open slot that's a drainage channel by another name, that you put an EV cable that is narrower than the slot you're putting it in. It goes through the little brush and it comes out the other end. It's as complex as that. You finish charging, you reel it back, it pulls out, it's through soft brushes, it pulls back, and then you reel it up, and then you wait 2 days till you run out of charge again, or you can park outside your house. So it's no feedback is good feedback. We also get good feedback, and you mentioned, I can't remember if we did it on this session or before when we were chatting, around mobility users. And
no, I haven't asked you that question, but no, talk about, yeah.
We talked about disabled drivers, and so general mobility is that we do well on surveys from those users because we have no moving parts. So if you're seated, we have a small tool. I haven't got one with me. I've got one in the car. But if you push the cable down and you just need a little bit more push to get down through it, because your hands, you might have some arthritis, you might have some movement issues in your fingers, then we supply a little cable pusher that just pushes it down. But essentially, you can roll it through there. You don't have to hold a lid open to thread it in. You don't need 2 hands to do that, which is important if you've got limited mobility and it's dark and it's raining and you'd rather be inside in the warmth. Then you want something that's quick and easy to install. So again, like I said, all of the cross pavement solution providers have different design features. Ours is really simple, really industrial, really strong, and it has no lid and it's no moving parts. So we score quite well.
That's cool. So actually, talking of rain, so what happens? So obviously you've got the channel, and originally, like we said, these channels were built for water, so for kind of rain seepage back onto the road. So if somebody, whether they have got mobility problems or not, actually are trying to charge when it's absolutely peeing it down, or trying to take the cable out, because
Yeah.
most times it is raining a lot, isn't it? Because we're in the
Yes.
UK and that's what happens. But is how much of that rain can get into the channel? I'm assuming the brushes aren't actually stopping, or they'll
No.
probably stop an amount, won't they?
Yeah,
Because
they
you were
will. Yeah.
saying earlier on about cleaning
Yeah.
channels out, weren't you?
Yes, I was. So the gullies are installed at a slight inclination from which is in general for pavements as well. They're at a slight inclination
Yeah,
where
get
they
you. Yeah.
drain towards the curb, and that's exactly the same for the gullies. Is that they are installed from the boundary to the curb at a slight angle for that same purpose, that it runs out of the
Okay.
gully. And you mentioned maintenance is. It's just a sweeping, literally going through the gap and just sweeping out any debris that's come through the brushes.
Mm,
And
mm.
again, for some of the local authorities where we're running trials, that's in their user agreement that the local authority has with the resident, is that they have an element of upkeep within that.
And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because actually, you do want that. You want that channel to be kept clean. But I understand what you're saying with regards to the runoff now. That totally makes
Yes.
sense that it's at that angle. But what people think about EVs. They think that there's going to be electricity, and and there is going, and you're going to get somebody's going to get a shock and all. That's why I just thought, if we say that on here, then actually the fact that the drainage channel is doing exactly that, it's draining, but it's also giving you the ability to put the cable down there, and there's going to be the runoff.
Yes.
Then
Yeah.
hopefully it'll kind of reduce that level of worry of people, because they hear this negative rubbish that comes out about how unsafe all these things are. I mean, it's ridiculous. Would they let an EV or a charger actually to be installed or on the road or whatever without proper safety checks? It's just not.
Exactly, and
You
I
know.
was going to make the point about the cables. The charging cables are all shielded anyway. They're
Yeah.
made to a completely different safety standard and industrial British standards than we don't have any stipulation over cables must be, because it's all done at the EV installation end, and they're all kite marked and CEs and British Standard 7671 I think is the electrical one. And we're on British Standard EM 1433 for the highway, so everything is compliant led for safety.
And that's the most important thing. But it's actually getting that word out, isn't it? To for kind of general public to understand that actually all of those kite marks are involved, and and all the highest standards have actually been used and integrated into the solution itself, and the EV and the charger and everything. Yours is
Yes,
just a small part
exactly,
of that,
exactly that. Yeah.
but you're giving people that ability to be able to charge on their street. So I suppose thinking about, because we've got there's a terrace street that's not far away from us. I was talking to you about this before we started recording, and it's really crowded. It's always very cramped on the street. It's got humps kind of going down the road itself to keep to stop blooming boy racers or even girl racers.
I was going to say,
Kind of there is that. We were talking about that earlier, weren't
when
we?
you're forward.
We're not going to go into that conversation. But actually, to keep the speed down. But there's always that issue where, and I've seen this, on this street, where they can't always park outside their house. So what are the options for that for those people. For a start off, can they share the gully between neighbours? For a start off, if they
The
get permission from each other,
Yeah,
kind of.
so the permission's not at a gully level. The permission is at the charger level. So
Yeah, you're right. Well, they might all have their individual chargers, might they? But they might just want to share the gully.
yeah, exactly. Well, they would share the charger, and then that they would then, because the charger just needs to be enabled to have another account on it, and it's co-charging. I think is there's apps. I
Yeah,
was
co-charger
Yeah.
has got that. But I
So
was yeah.
the resident who owns the charger sets up another account for his or her neighbour, and then they just tap on like we were talking about Electriverse. You just tap on like that, and your account is charged. And I think there's schemes where the resident who owns the charger and the infrastructure, they get a small commission, a kickback for allowing that charging to take place. And I've got one local authority that's going to start a pilot in August that is their stipulation for all of the EV charging that they entertain is that they must all be co-charging enabled. So that makes good sense. It makes, particularly if you're not guaranteed to be outside your house all the time. I think having a gully just enables the charge point to go to the pavement, to the curb, where
Yeah.
a car maybe.
Yeah.
If you haven't got access to the charger through a little co-charging RFID card tapping on, then it doesn't make it. You're not going to be able to use that charger anyway. We found it's not having a gully doesn't give you exclusivity to park outside your house.
No.
Typically, and I lived in Southwest London for a good while, and I pretty much people get used to, oh, that's Gary's, he lives there, so I'll go on next one.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying
Yeah.
particularly London, but it's there is a settling down where people tend to recognise the car. And again, with EV charging, as you know, I charge my car. If I'm going on a long journey, I'll charge it big the night before I go, and then I will go as far as I can, and then I'll use the public infrastructure. But if I'm just at home, I'm not charging every night. I'm charging once every 3 or 4 nights.
Yeah.
So again, part of that selection for pilots for use, have you got double yellow lines outside your house? It's a bit of a stopper. Single yellow lines with parking restrictions, loading bays. There are all of these factors. It's that a gully provides a solution, but that solution might not be valid for all residents because of other circumstances. They might have trees, other pavement, installations, water boxes, grids, manhole covers, and things like that just make it not practically feasible to have not just gully, but any of the other solutions as well. We all go in the ground. We all have the same trench done.
And you were saying about if you've got wonky pavements as well. Before we were recording, you were saying, because that's an issue. The pavement has got to be right, hasn't it?
Yeah, and again, we're pretty inclusive. Gully doesn't want to rule the world. We recognise, out of the 4 or 5 main vendors, at least 3 of us are reliant on having straight flat pavements because we are straight flat chassis, cable conduits. Ours it doesn't bend. However, cables don't get rubbed if they're laid flat. You have to, again, if it was a very undulating pavement, we would reject that as a potential site. But there may be another solution that does it. So that's why I think that what the landscape will look like in year to 2 years' time is that there may be a choice to the resident of 3, and dependent on the type of pavement they have, whether it's undulating or not undulating, that will give them a decision tree about which way they go. The price is probably going to be similar, but there are other factors. If you've got a pavement that you've got lots of undulations and curves in it, that's not going to be good for the cable being pulled in and out and being rubbed, 2 or 3, 4, 5 times a week, every month, every year for 10 years. Sooner or later, you'll come through on the cable. So you need to take all of these factors into consideration. But I don't think, every pavement's different, and 80% of them will be absolutely fine for us and the other flat pavement providers, and the other 20% would be for another.
So at least, like you say, there are a number of different providers that will, look at all of these things, because I do think that there the whole thing about EV charging in general is it's not a one size fits all, is it?
No.
So for example, if you've got an undulating pavement, but actually you've got lampposts, well, possibly, lamppost charging might be a good idea. Or,
Exactly.
all of
Yeah.
these things, you've got to take it into
Yes.
account, because we can't just think as if everybody is actually driving a Tesla with a beautiful house and drive, and it's all wonderful.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
because we have to think about everybody, their finances, and like, being able to kind of provide people with that subscription service that you were talking about. I really, really hope that some of the councils, some of the local authorities start, or more of them start offering that, because like you say, we've got this period of time, and we kind of say, time flies.
It does.
Actually, it isn't going to be long before it's going to be upon us. So looking at all of the things that we need to do, this is just one part of it, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm being asked more and more now about the models, the different types of models, because largely it's not a technical discussion anymore. The Gul-e product's been tested in the ground for 3.5 years. We've got 12, 13, 14 live sites around the country. We've got another 5 in the can waiting for their funding to arrive so they can place an order, and then we're shipping those. Momentum is, and a lot of EVs are coming onto the market now after having been on a business lease or a personal lease for 3 years, and they're now entering the market. So you mentioned Teslas were like 45, 50k 3 years ago. Now you can pick one up for like 13,000, 14,000. Still a lot of money,
Yeah.
but when you take it in the round about how much diesel you would be paying with car tax, with servicing, and you add it up, you can make a, and this is where it's so key. At 7 pence a kilowatt, you've got a compelling argument. At
Yeah.
70 pence a kilowatt, that argument is kind of diluted a lot, just on financial costs basis. You've still got the climate change, you've still got clean air, you've still got road tax. Although again, I know road tax is going to change and how EV owners and drivers pay for things. So government needs to get joined up to make it super compelling for home charged EV ownership should be the mantra for this government particularly, to get going quickly. We are part of the solution. We need a hand in having the gates opened for us, so we don't always have to keep tapping on the door of the keeper. That we get some of these gates that are just pass-throughs, where it's you guys again. There are 4 or 5 of us. We're the same people knocking on the same doors. Just give us all blanket, tick in the box that our products are tested. We're 25-ton tested, C250. We've been salt and spray tested within an inch of our lives. Ours are galvanized steel. We warranty it for 20 years. We warranty our product for 20 years.
Wow.
So there's not a lot to go wrong with it. And if anything does go wrong with it, we'll fix it. So if we take that as being read, let's then move on to the permits and the payment plans and the usage models, where we can help people. We're being more, rather than just worrying about repeating the same test process on the product. Let's switch our emphasis to try and provide joined up solutions with the local authority. We can't do anything without them. Residents are overwhelmingly, we've got probably 3,500 expressions of interest from around the country on our website saying we want a Gul-e. They want a Gul-e because they've come to our site. I'm sure the other vendors have got equal amounts saying they want their products as well, which is why I don't want to get bogged down in ours is better than theirs, etc., use cases. There will be 2 or 3 vendors should be on every local authority website. It says these are the characteristics of this one. these are the characteristics of that one, this is the price, this is all the rest of it, you choose. And they shouldn't care about that. It should be enabling the resident to help the climate, help the clean air, help their pocket. The more money they have in their pocket, the more they can spend on whatever, and then everything goes around. You see, it's all cyclical.
Yes. Yeah.
You joined up.
So I can see, I've got your website in front of me, and I will share this in the show notes.
Great.
So you can, as a resident, you can register interest on the
Yes.
website, can't you?
You can.
And then what are the next steps, and how much does it cost a resident then? I mean, I know you said that some councils charge and some don't, but on average, what's the kind of, and you said about the 4 Ps as well, didn't you? But
Yes.
on average, how long does it take? Once they put an expression of interest in, what happens next?
So then the hard yards start after the expression of interest is put in, is that they get a courtesy email from us saying, appreciate your interest, and we will work with your local authority. At the same time, we have all of the local authorities on a regular email database, which we've collated over a number of years now, purchased and collated. And it's updated, and then we will send them saying we have residents in your area who are interested in that. We would like to take part in any EV strategy, cross-pavement solution type pilots or evaluations that you're undertaking. Mm-hmm. And then we wait for them to come back to us to say yes or no. My role is then to follow up with a telephone call or a personalised email and attempt to get through to the right person at the right time and present my credentials, as my dad would say. Present your credentials, what you can help them with, and most of them are aware of cross-pavement solutions now. It's moved tremendously in the last year. It's a common turn of phrase, so people know what you're calling for, and then we try and help them with. I was with South Wales Council on Friday that had no idea, had no paperwork, no nothing, no planning or anything. So I'm linking them in to it's on social media, so I'm not betraying any sort of confidences with Suffolk and with also Bromley, because they've got some very good paperwork from their side. So again, the pavement element of the 4 Ps was they've got some, in my speak, S50, S178s, but they are specific forms for a specific utilisation of the pavement. And again, this is what we're taking into our joined up cross-pavement permit, and we're taking their version of that and then giving it back. So payment-wise, well, planning, you can go onto your local planning. It's still subject to local planning. So I think for where I live in Cheshire, it's about £260 for planning permission. Takes about, well, I had some solar panels that were about 10 weeks, which was scary. Then you've got permits to go into the pavement. They're normally, again, some are waiving them depending on if they're going to own the gully and provide it as a service, subscription-wise. Then they don't need planning for the cross pavement, and they don't need an S50, so they'll just do it because they're owning the responsibility for it.
Yes.
So those. But there are some councils charge £200 or £300 for that as well. So before you know it, you're up to £500 for your permits. Our gullies on our website, all the other cross pavement providers publish theirs. We're at £499, and then it's probably about another £400 to install it. Your EV charger and the install is probably about £850. So you're kind of looking around about that £2,200. But the government is providing funding for cross-pavement solutions, and also for, I think, the EV you can use £350. So there are some rebates. But again, they're finishing at the end of March. So we wait with bated breath to see what other funding. It's been such a roaring success, and it's really kicked off a lot of good pilots across the country. Some very, on the one hand, you can maybe feel my frustration at times, but I have to say, at the other end, and there is a spectrum, is at the other end, there's some very innovative local authorities that are grasping the nettle and owning their own destiny.
Yeah.
and are looking at all of the versions, and they understand the planning, and they're looking at this Dominious type of planning where it's much cut down. So we're working with them to try and get this cross-pavement permit put together.
And that's the main thing, isn't it? It's about reducing the amount of red tape that goes with all of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
speeding.
so,
Yeah,
yeah, and because if people, suppose it's reducing the red tape and making it affordable
yeah.
for
Whilst
everybody.
retaining that compliance and audit, because we've had the discussion internally and also with residents who say, I don't understand why it's taking so long. Well, you have to have the planning. Why do I need planning? Well, we need a record. You know, there are other ways of getting an EV charger that don't require planning, but then there's no audit, there's no record, and that's fine. But if you want to do something on the pavement in 5 years' time or 7 years' time, and you've got no record of what electrical equipment is on the outside of the house within 2 meters of where you're working, that might be significant. And I just think, rather than try and replace the planning, is work with it to make it smaller, lighter, nimbler, because the information contained in it might be really, really useful to someone to do their job in future years. And get it quicker, absolutely. Get it shorter, all those good things. But don't just get rid of it completely. We need an audit and an electrical certificate.
And I agree. But this is kind of about standardising what making sure that the local authorities are actually standardising and possibly best practice, across all of the local authorities. That's a longer term thing, isn't it? But I'm gonna finish off by asking you one final question. So, what would you like to see happen, either with Gul-e or cross-pavement solutions, or just in general over the next 5 years? What would you like to see happen?
So I go back to my 4 Ps. I really think that if there was a 4-point plan, that I had a magic wand and I was rolled forward 2 years, not even 2 years. Liz, I reckon a year. We need to do this in a year. In a year's time, we need to have Dominious. I keep looking down at it. I don't know when I'm going to remember it. Dominious planning that's light, that's maybe £20. So it's part of it. So it's vastly reduced. It's repeatable, and it might be a tick box of here's our 4 main EV chargers that we authorise. There's a tick box that says here's our photographic evidence of the install and the certificate, job done, and that takes a week. And includes someone to go out and test that it's there. I think the pavement, we could minimise that to S50 light or a 178 light, but a sort of cross pavement part of this pavement permit. Pricing, I think, if we can carry on the subsidies from the government for Levi funding to get the local authorities to keep trialling it, keep buying in bulk of each of the vendors' products, to test them, create a catalogue, a portfolio of what we do for different use cases of the pavement. That would be really, really good. I think having some sort of payment mechanism where either the local authority owns it. Is not, all local authorities are equal, but some are more equal than others. So they have more resources, they have more availability. We were talking earlier about one London borough who didn't have any web building capabilities. They had to find smaller companies who would do it on a free basis for reference or whatever. We need to have maybe some sort of standardised cross-pavement website that you can give and feed it to them as maybe part of a managed service that a lot of them are looking for, is to say, well, here it is, you just put your logo at the top and it will capture all of the information that's required, and then it would manage the purchasing of the EV charger and the cross payment at the same time. Wrap it all up and then give them a 3-year term where they're paying £10 a month for all of it put together. And again, we're working with a couple of one particular charge point operator to offer a no capital outlay, and they just pay for it through their electricity kilowatt hours. It's not done yet, but I see that as being we just sign up and we get the equipment, included within some sort of agreement that we just pay a slightly higher rate per kilowatt hour as a service. So that's my magic wand, 4Ps going forward.
I think that's great. Actually, I think that's a really good place to end on, to be honest, because I think that putting those into practice, that's another one, isn't it? P.
Yes.
Put it into practice might, we'll see some different things happening over the next 12, 18, 24 months, and I'll keep my fingers crossed that things will start moving in the right directions and the local authorities that are a bit more reticent actually start sitting up and listening to the ones that are actually doing something, and like you say, using the case studies. But on that point, Gary, I just want to say thank you ever so much for your time. It's been really interesting, and thank you. It's just let's get these solutions in, because we need several different types of solution for all of this.
I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to say to everybody, as I say at the end of every podcast episode, please like, share, subscribe. We're on YouTube. We're on all of the different audio channels. So Apple, Spotify, Amazon, you name it. Mostly we're on there. Please elevate this message and share with people who have never watched it or listened to it. That's all I ask of you. But on that point, I'm going to say thank you for listening. Thank you for watching Electric Evolution. I really love bringing you these weekly conversations about sustainability, renewables, and building a cleaner future together. If you're passionate about positive change, please like, subscribe, and share with others who also care about these topics. You can also download our white paper, Plugging into the Future, at fullcircleci.co.uk and join the discussion on improving sustainable transport. Or email me at liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. Thanks for watching. Bye.